The young man's name is Kazuya. As he was heading to the convenience store, suddenly, he saw people panicking. It turned out they were being attacked by a robber. When the robber was about to attack two girls, Kazuya immediately intervened. Unexpectedly, he was stabbed by the robber. Although Kazuya was seriously injured, he realized that the two girls were safe. So, he felt at ease and passed away. Because he was a good person, Kazuya was reincarnated into the body of a boy named Kane. The maid, upon seeing him wake up, was overjoyed. His mother was also very worried, because Kane had been sick with a fever for a whole week. While Kane was in shock, he couldn't believe he had turned into a kid. So, he started checking his body. His mother realized Kane's fever had gone down, which made her very happy. So, she went to cook soup for Kane to help him recover quickly. While Kane didn't know who they were, at that moment, he realized he had been reincarnated, just like in an anime. This meant that he had died before. But, he was very happy that the two girls were safe. He began to be curious about this world. However, Kane discovered that his sword had also shrunk, which shocked him. Since Kane had become the youngest child of a wealthy family, he was taken care of very attentively by the servants. This made him feel uncomfortable. At this time, Kane learned that his father's name was Garm. He was the lord of Gracia territory and had an entire army. His father had 2 wives. His mother was the second wife, and she had 2 children. Meanwhile, Kane also had an older sister. When he learned that his father owned a monster forest, Kane became excited, because this world had both adventurers and monsters, and they fought each other using magic. So, Kane also wanted to learn magic. But, Sylvia told him he should learn how to write first. Then, Kane began learning the language of this world. At this time, everyone knew that Kane had learned to write and do math, which made them very happy. But, this was too easy for a high school student like him. They found Kane very strange after his fever subsided. He didn't even want to drink milk anymore. So, Kane said he just wanted to learn about this world. After that, his father promised to let him read books about magic, and Kane would have to undergo a baptism when he turned 5. Meanwhile, Kane's mother felt that he was a genius. Then, Kane was able to create fire, which made him very excited. But, he still couldn't control it. Luckily, Kane hadn't been discovered by anyone yet. Rain noticed that he had been studying a lot of books. So, she said she would share her research secrets with him. After that, Rain came every day to teach Kane about this world. It turned out that the first king of this kingdom was an adventurer, and this world had many different races, which made Kane very excited. He immediately wanted to explore the outside world. Finally, Kane turned 5 years old, which made everyone very happy, because today was his baptism day. Then, they all went outside together, which made Kane very excited, because this was the world he had always dreamed of. Kane didn't know what receiving a blessing would be like. So, Rain showed Kane her attributes, which fascinated him. But, Kane noticed a line that said, "Obsessed with Kane," which made Rain embarrassed. His mother said that Rain had been blessed by a second-rank god. The gods who grant blessings are divided into levels from 5 to 1. The higher the level of the blessing god, the greater the magical power of the blessed person. Then, they arrived at the pantheon of the Marineford faith. Kane saw that there were 7 gods inside. When Kane began the baptism ceremony, suddenly, the statues of the gods lit up. At that moment, Kane met the 7 gods, which surprised him, because he had never heard anyone mention that he would meet the gods directly during the baptism. This old man's name was Zenom. He was the god who created this world, and they told Kane that, in fact, his previous death was not planned, because the robber would have tripped on his own and been caught. This shocked Kane, because his actions had been unnecessary. But, because he was a good person, the god of earth requested that they reincarnate him into this world. This made Kane very happy, and he thanked them, because they had allowed him to live in this world. Suddenly, all the gods blessed him, and they advised Kane to check his blessings again upon his return. After Kane returned, his father wanted to check Kane's stats. But, Kane pretended to have a stomachache and ran away. When Kane checked his blessings, it surprised him, because all of his magic had reached level 10. Even his martial arts and strength were at the maximum level. Kane felt like he was hacking a game, because for normal people, the highest magic power level was only 5. He didn't know how to hide these stats. Suddenly, He realized that creative magic could conceal stats. So, Cain immediately changed everything. At that moment, everyone was still curious about Cain's stats. Thus, he opened his status board for them to see. It shocked them, because he had received the blessings of 7 gods. Even his magic power exceeded 300,000. Cain suddenly remembered he forgot to change this part. While the strongest royal mage only had a magic power stat of 10,000. This shocked Cain's father, because he was only 5 years old. So, Cain's father told everyone to keep this secret. If Cain was discovered, he would be controlled by the kingdom. When Cain returned to his room, he saw a summoning book. So, he decided to try it. Unexpectedly, he summoned a monster, which frightened Rain. So, Cain fought it, because he wanted to protect everyone and not let anyone cry. Unexpectedly, Cain defeated the monster. Rain saw that Cain was unharmed, which made her very happy. Meanwhile, Cain realized that in this world, he could save everyone. At that moment, Cain's father held a birthday celebration for him. He asked Cain what he wanted to become in the future. Thus, Cain said he would become an adventurer, so that he could explore this world. After that, Cain's father decided to hire a tutor for him, which excited Cain. At that moment, his tutor arrived. So, Cain used teleportation magic. Unexpectedly, he fell, landing right on his tutor. It turned out their names were Millie and Nina. They were both adventurers. Cain saw that Nina was a beautiful elven woman, which surprised him. They saw that Cain was very friendly, which reassured the two women, and they would teach Cain for 3 years. So, they began training. Millie immediately started teaching Cain swordsmanship. Cain's swordsmanship was unexpectedly excellent. It surprised her. Nina felt that he was even better than Millie. But, Millie didn't want to lose to a 5-year-old child. So, she decided to challenge Cain. She didn't expect Cain to be able to fight her. When they learned that Cain had just been baptized the day before, they were astonished. Nina realized that he had been blessed by the god of war. By then, Millie was exhausted. So, it was Nina's turn to teach him magic. Nina said that she had been blessed by a 3rd-tier god. But, Cain said that he had learned magic by reading books. This immediately surprised them, because he could use magic with ease. Nina discovered that he didn't need to chant spells. He could even use all types of attributes. This made Nina feel inferior, because she wasn't as good as a 5-year-old child. Even a high-level magician wasn't as good as him. So, Nina realized that Cain had also been blessed by the god of magic. This shocked them, because Cain was blessed by 2 gods. They had nothing left to teach him. Suddenly, they discovered that Cain also possessed an item box. They realized that he was a genius. Millie and Nina didn't know what to teach Cain anymore. So, Cain asked them to teach him about the outside world, because he had not been allowed to leave the mansion yet. They realized that with Cain's current strength, he was already capable of training outside. So, they went to ask Cain's father for permission to take him out for training. Millie said that Cain's power had already surpassed the basic level. If he continued training here, their mansion would be blown away. This shocked Cain's father. So, he decided to let Cain train outside. But, he had to return home before sunset and wasn't allowed to go too far. This made Cain very happy. After that, they immediately ventured into the outside world. At that moment, Nina told Cain to use intermediate magic to attack a rock. Unexpectedly, he made the rock explode instantly, causing Millie and Nina to fall over. They realized that his magic had already surpassed the intermediate level. Even his magic power surpassed that of a normal person, because he didn't feel tired at all. Suddenly, they were attacked by a killer rabbit. It moved very fast, but Cain defeated it instantly. This was his first achievement. So, Cain stored it in his item box to show his mother and sister. Millie saw Cain's item box. She said that she was also saving money to buy an item pouch, but it was very expensive. At that moment, they decided to continue hunting. So, Nina used search magic, and she detected monsters ahead. This excited Cain. So, he also wanted to try using this magic. Unexpectedly, he could clearly see 4 killer rabbits. This surprised Nina, because he succeeded on his first try. So, they began fighting the rabbits. Suddenly, one rabbit escaped into the forest. Millie and Nina told him not to chase after it, because that forest was full of powerful monsters. 10 years ago, those monsters attacked the city. but thanks to the sturdy walls, the people inside remained safe. Millie told Cain to become a strong adventurer to protect the city. That night, Cain realized he had leveled up to 8, but he had only killed 4 rabbits. It turned out that Cain possessed a skill that multiplied experience by 100. This made him think that the gods had hacked the game for him a bit too much. If people found out, he would be punished. But Cain just wanted to explore the outside world, so he had to keep this secret. The next morning, Cain went with Millie and Nina to the Adventurers Guild. This excited Cain. He didn't expect the guild to be so crowded. And the receptionist was a beastman girl named Rudy. She saw that Cain was just a child. But when she found out that Cain was the son of a count, Rudy was shocked. Suddenly, a tall, burly man came over to cause trouble. He mocked Millie and Nina for being only D-rank adventurers. But they ignored him. This made him angry, so he grabbed Millie and Nina. However, Cain stopped him, and he easily knocked him down. This enraged the man. He kept attacking Cain, but Cain dodged every strike. He even caught the man's sword with just 2 fingers. Then, Cain threw it aside. So, Millie and Nina thanked Cain because he had protected them. After that, they continued training together. 3 years passed quickly. So, Cain wanted to do something to thank Millie and Nina because they had helped him so much all this time. So, Cain decided to make an item pouch as a gift for Millie, and he went into the forest to hunt for materials. The guards thought that the monsters in the forest were preparing to attack the city. So, Cain's father mobilized soldiers to stop the monsters. After Cain gathered all the materials, he teleported back to the castle. When Cain's father arrived, he found that all the monsters had already been wiped out. So, he realized that Cain was the one who did it. At that moment, Millie and Nina realized that Cain was far stronger than them. Today, they had to say goodbye to Cain. This made them very sad. Suddenly, Cain gave them 2 item pouches that he had made himself. This surprised them, because the materials for these pouches came from high-level monsters. Cain said that these pouches could store an entire mansion. This shocked Millie and Nina, because a normal item pouch could only hold a single carriage. So, Cain's item pouch was a national treasure. This made them very happy. Suddenly, Millie and Nina kissed Cain to thank him, and they promised to help Cain whenever he needed. After that, they bid farewell to Cain. At that moment, Cain had defeated a dragon. He didn't know how many levels he had gained. Unexpectedly, Cain's mana had surpassed 80 million. This shocked him. 2 years later, Cain was now 10 years old. So, he was traveling with his family to the royal capital for a ceremony. Cain's father said that when he turned 12, he would enter the academy and study alongside Rain. At that moment, Cain's father was worried that monsters might appear. So, Cain used his search skill. Suddenly, he detected people being attacked by monsters ahead. Thus, he used wind magic to move at incredible speed. Meanwhile, the group of people was under attack. Fortunately, Cain arrived just in time. He immediately defeated the orcs to save them. At that moment, Cain saw that many people were injured. So, he used healing magic to restore their wounds. He also gathered the bodies of those who had perished. When Cain's father arrived, he was shocked, because Cain had already defeated all the monsters. Suddenly, he noticed a crest. It belonged to Duke Santana. Then, 2 beautiful princesses appeared. Their names were Telestia and Silk. This surprised Cain, but they were also injured. So, Cain used his magic to heal them, helping them recover instantly. This made Telestia and Silk feel warm inside. Unexpectedly, the 2 princesses fell for Cain. So, they started competing for his attention. When they learned that Cain was heading to the royal capital, they immediately pulled him onto their carriage to travel with them, leaving Cain's father helpless. At that moment, Cain felt confused. He didn't understand why they were sitting so close to him. They even insisted that he call them by their names, which made him embarrassed, since they had just met. Eventually, they arrived at the inn. So, Cain planned to meet them again tomorrow. Unexpectedly, the 2 princesses wanted to stay in the same room as Cain, no matter how much Cain's father tried to persuade them otherwise. They were determined to have Cain as their personal bodyguard. So, Cain had no choice but to agree. Garm told him to do his best to protect himself, since he was only 10 years old. At that moment, they entered the room. This excited Telestia and Silk, because they got to sleep next to Cain. So, They pushed their beds right next to his, leaving Cain completely helpless, because he wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. The next morning, Cain's eyes were dark and puffy, because they had hugged him all night. Finally, they arrived at the royal capital. Cain was excited, because this place was enormous. At that moment, they met the vice commander of the night order. He saw the two princesses clinging to Cain. Suddenly, Dime also thanked Cain, because he had protected the two princesses. After that, Cain handed over the bodies of the fallen knights to Dime. He said that these knights were brave warriors, because they had fought against 50 orcs to protect the princesses. So, Dime would honor them, and return them to their families. Suddenly, Dime said that the king wanted to meet Cain. This surprised him. At that moment, he went to meet the king. It turned out that Telestia and Silk had told everyone about him defeating 50 orcs. So, the king decided to reward him, and he granted Cain the title of Baron, along with 100 silver coins and a mansion. This shocked everyone, because he was just a 10-year-old boy. Suddenly, someone objected, because Cain was just a child. He couldn't receive such rewards. But, the king said, defeating 50 orcs alone wasn't something just anyone could do. So, the king immediately dismissed the troublemaker. In the end, Cain had no choice but to accept the reward. At that moment, Cain's father was very surprised, because Cain had just arrived and was already granted a noble title. Suddenly, the king and the princesses arrived. It turned out that Telestia and Silk's father wanted to personally thank Cain, because he had protected his daughters. Suddenly, they asked Cain whether he would marry Telestia or Silk. This shocked him. The king said that Cain had yet to have his coming-of-age ceremony, but he could still get engaged beforehand. Since Telestia and Silk had hugged Cain and slept with him, he was now obligated to marry them. It turned out that the king and everyone had already discussed this, because they realized that Cain was a genius. And since both Telestia and Silk wanted to marry him, the king decided that they had to keep Cain here. At that moment, Cain didn't know how to refuse. His father also had no idea how to handle it. So, Cain had no choice but to accept. This made Telestia and Silk very happy, and they said they would never forget that night, which shocked the king and Telestia's father. They forced Cain to confess his crimes. At this moment, Cain met the gods again. He felt that they had accidentally hacked the game too much for him. But, they said that Cain was now the strongest human, and they offered him to become a demigod, like divine beasts and dragon gods. However, there were still some things beyond his limits. Suddenly, the gods found this world too boring. So, they wanted him to use his past life memories to create some toys for them, which greatly amused the gods. At this moment, Cain was shopping for clothes with his mother and sister, making him feel embarrassed, because this was a women's clothing store. Suddenly, he met Palma, which made her very happy, because they hadn't seen each other for 5 years. It turned out she was working for her uncle's shop. When Tammany's learned that Cain was a noble, it surprised him. After that, Cain went to check out Tammany's shop, and he wanted Tammany's to help him create a toy. So, Cain taught him how to play tic-tac-toe, which fascinated Tammany's, because they could sell this game at a low price. So, Cain paid Tammany's 1 gold coin as compensation. It shocked him, because this amount of money was too much. But, Cain said it was his investment. When Cain went outside, suddenly, he met Rain. She immediately scolded Cain for not watching her try on clothes. So that night, Cain had to keep watching Rain try on outfits, leaving him helpless. The next morning, Tammany's had finished making the game, which excited Cain. So, he started playing it. Tammany's found the game very easy to understand. He was confident it would become very popular. Cain then suggested that Tammany's make 2 versions of the game, one for nobles and one for commoners. That way, everyone could buy the game. But, Tammany's company didn't have enough capital for production. Fortunately, Cain had already prepared the money, shocking Tammany's once again. So, Tammany's was able to start the plan immediately. Suddenly, he suggested that Cain make a contract. He would swear an oath to the commercial god. This would prevent anyone from copying Cain's product. So, Cain started drafting the contract. Now, they could begin selling and producing the game. Suddenly, Cain suggested that Tammany's create a luxury version of the game, so he could gift it to the royal family, surprising Tammany's, because he never thought he would be making toys for the royal family. But, Cain encouraged him, making him very happy, while Cain thought the gods were having fun playing. At this moment, Cain and his parents were heading to the royal palace for a banquet. Suddenly, he encountered Corzino's family, the one who had previously opposed Cain becoming a baron. After that, Cain met Silk. She was very beautiful, but her father's smile was rather sinister. He thanked Cain for saving his daughter. At that moment, Cain complimented Silk on how beautiful she looked in her dress, which delighted her, so she continued to fall for Cain. Meanwhile, Cain's father realized that his son was very skilled at flirting. He didn't seem like a 10-year-old at all. At that moment, the king appeared. Cain saw that Telestia was also very beautiful, so he continued to flirt with Telestia. Surprising the king, he thought that Garm had taught Cain how to flirt. Meanwhile, Telestia felt pleased, because Cain complimented her, saying she was as beautiful as a goddess. After that, Cain gifted the king his game, which amused him, so he wanted to speak with Cain privately after the banquet. At this moment, Cain met Silk, which delighted her, because Telestia had to stay by the king's side, so she could talk to Cain alone. Meanwhile, Cain found Silk very cute, and she kept calling his name, making him embarrassed. Suddenly, they were interrupted by Corzino's son. Habit thought Silk would also be close to him, but Silk was very cold toward him, so they tried to drive Cain away, because he thought Cain was just the son of a baron, a lower rank than his father. So he challenged Cain to a duel, to win Silk's affection. At that moment, they used magic to attack Cain, but they were unexpectedly terrible, which annoyed Silk, so she declared that Cain was actually a baron, shocking them, because they had heard that Cain defeated 50 orcs alone. So they quickly apologized and ran away, which greatly amused Silk. When she asked Cain to go on a date with her, suddenly, Telestia ran over, making Cain flustered. Silk said that she would date Cain, making Telestia jealous, so she also wanted to date Cain. Suddenly, the king appeared, shocking Cain, because the king thought Cain was trying to seduce his daughter. At this moment, Cain received a mansion as a reward from the king, surprising him, because the mansion was in terrible condition. When he went inside to inspect it, Cain realized the mansion was extremely dirty, so he decided to clean it up. Cain immediately used magic. He instantly restored the mansion to look brand new, making Cain feel very comfortable, because this place was now his home. At this moment, Sylvia and the other servants arrived. They were very happy to continue serving Cain, and his new butler's name was Corin. He greatly admired Cain, because Cain had defeated the orcs alone. After that, Sylvia told everyone to start cleaning, but they couldn't find a single speck of dirt. Cain explained that he had already used magic to clean everything. Sylvia wasn't surprised by this at all, because she was already used to Cain. Suddenly, Corin reminded him to return to his father's house, because his two older brothers were waiting. At that moment, Jin and Alex were very proud of their younger brother, because Cain had been granted the title of Baron by the king, but they thought Cain's mansion was too run down, so they assumed it would be haunted. Unexpectedly, when they arrived at Cain's mansion, they were shocked, because his mansion was incredibly beautiful. However, Garm felt that the interior lacked artistic statues for display, so Cain immediately created a massive dragon statue, frightening Sylvia and everyone else. Garm couldn't understand how Cain was able to create such a statue, so Cain explained that he had defeated it, surprising Garm, because Cain had slain an sulfur monosulfide rank monster. Suddenly, his mother and sister discovered that the toilet could spray water. It turned out that Cain had designed it using magic, which fascinated them. Garm also liked the toilet, so he asked Cain to install one in their home, and he told Cain that he must host a banquet now that he had a new mansion, as it was a noble tradition, which surprised Cain. He didn't know what to do. Fortunately, Corin had compiled a guest list for him. He noticed that Marquis Corzino was on the list, so he didn't want to invite him. But Corin said that inviting high-ranking nobles was necessary, and Cain had to personally invite the king. At that moment, Cain didn't know what food to prepare, so Sylvia told him that he didn't need to be too formal. He just needed to show his hospitality, which helped Cain understand. After that, he started creating beautiful glass cups. Next, He prepared steak. Sylvia found the dish delicious, especially when paired with wine, which delighted her. At this moment, Cain went to see the king. The king scolded Cain for not sending him an invitation card, while Eric had received one, making the king jealous, because he was also going to be Cain's future father-in-law. But Cain explained that he wanted to meet the king in person, to deliver the invitation directly, which made the king very happy. At this moment, the servants learned that Cain had invited the king to the banquet, which surprised them. But when they learned the princess was Cain's fiancée, they were even more shocked. So, they promised to do their best to help Cain with the banquet. That evening, the banquet was held. Cain saw that Silk looked very beautiful, so he invited them inside. Eric saw the giant dragon statue, which amazed him. Then, Cain raised a toast with everyone. Unexpectedly, they found Cain's wine delicious, because of the bubbles that burst in their mouths. Meanwhile, Eric realized that Cain had won over the ladies with his desserts, so he thought Cain was very skilled at charming women. At that moment, the king and Telestia arrived. When the king drank Cain's wine, he was delighted. Then came the steak dish. He found its flavor very rich. Suddenly, the queen discovered that the toilet had automatic water spray, which fascinated her. When the king tried it himself, he also found it very comfortable. So, he immediately asked Cain to install one for him. At that moment, the king felt that Cain's banquet was amazing. Thus, everyone applauded to congratulate Cain. Suddenly, Marquis Corzino also arrived. He immediately mocked Cain's mansion for being small. But when he saw the dragon, he was terrified. Yet, he still looked down on Cain's banquet. Unexpectedly, Cain's wine and steak were delicious. But he still tried to act unimpressed. Then, Cain said he would give him a wonderful gift, which made Corzino excited. It turned out the king had arrived. He scolded Corzino for his arrogant attitude, which frightened him. At that moment, the king realized Cain had used him to punish Corzino, which made him angry. So, he scolded Cain for 2 hours straight. The next morning, Cain met Dime. It turned out Cain wanted to sell monster materials. When Dime learned Cain wanted to sell materials from an earth dragon, he was shocked, because that was an sulfur monosulfide rank monster. It would normally take an A- rank adventurer team to fight it. So, Cain took out the materials for Dime to inspect, which shocked him again, because they were all from high-ranking monsters, making Dime suspect Cain was a messenger of the gods. But Cain said he was just a normal count's son. When he was about to escape, suddenly, Dime suggested that Cain watch the Night Squad's training, because he wanted his captain to see Cain's strength. Then, Dime introduced Cain to the Knights. But their captain hadn't arrived yet. So, Dime suggested Cain spar with the Knights first. However, seeing that Cain was just a 10-year-old boy, they sent out one knight to fight him first. The knight said he would go easy on Cain. Unexpectedly, as soon as the match began, Cain instantly defeated him, which greatly amused Dime. So, he suggested that 30 knights fight Cain at the same time. Suddenly, their captain appeared and stopped the match. She scolded Dime for attacking a child. Cain realized she was an elf. But Dime told her that Cain was the Baron who had wiped out 30 orcs, which piqued her interest. So, she also wanted to fight Cain. It turned out she was known as the Sword Saint. Suddenly, she immediately attacked Cain. They fought at an incredible speed, which amazed everyone. However, Cain quickly defeated her. Unexpectedly, she decided to choose Cain as her husband, which shocked him and everyone else, because he was only 10 years old, and he didn't even know who she was. So, she introduced herself as Tifana, the captain of this kingdom's Night Squad. Since elves could live up to 300 years, she told Cain that age didn't matter. But Cain was already engaged to the princess, so he couldn't decide on his own. Unexpectedly, Tifana decided to go see the king, which made Cain nervous. Then, they went to meet the king. Tifana immediately proposed marriage to Cain, which shocked both the king and Eric. Cain explained that because he had defeated Tifana, she wanted to marry him. At that moment, the king told Cain that Tifana's homeland was in the Elven lands. Since elves had beautiful appearances, they were once kidnapped and turned into slaves. But when the Esfort kingdom was founded, they abolished racial discrimination. So, the elves' kingdom became peaceful again. And currently, Tiphina was considered a princess of the elves. At that moment, the king informed Tiphina that Cain was already engaged to Telestia and Silk. They thought Tiphina would give up. Unexpectedly, she was still determined to marry Cain, which left the king helpless. So, he told Tiphina to inform her father first, which made her very happy. She immediately dragged Cain away. While the king still didn't understand why Cain was so powerful, because he was only 10 years old yet had defeated the Sword Saint. Meanwhile, Dime suspected Cain was a divine apostle. So, they decided to investigate the matter. At that moment, Cain met Dime. He noticed Cain looked exhausted. It turned out that every day, Tiphina forced Cain to go on dates with her until she was tired. And Cain discovered that he had earned the title of Sword Saint. Suddenly, the king wanted to meet Cain. They handed Cain an emperor-class magic book, which excited Cain. So, he immediately started reading it. Cain realized it contained advanced magic. However, the king noticed something. Cain was different from them, because none of them could read the book. It turned out that the book was written in Japanese by the first Cain. So, Cain realized the first king of S-Fort Kingdom was also a reincarnated person. At that moment, the king asked Cain, "Who are you?" Cain realized he could no longer hide the truth. So, he told everyone. He still had memories of his past life, and he was similar to their first Cain, which shocked everyone. He had even met the 7 gods, which left everyone in disbelief. So, they asked Cain to show them his status screen, making everyone freeze, because he carried the title of Apostle of the Gods. The king then said, not just him, but everyone in the world should kneel before Cain. But, Cain didn't want that, because he loved his current life. In his previous world, he was a lonely person who lived alone. But in this world, Cain had a family, and he had amazing friends. So, Cain didn't want anything to change. At that moment, the king agreed with him. He would still be Garm's son. However, the king proposed that Cain become the ruler of the kingdom, which shocked Cain. Suddenly, Tiphina announced her father had agreed to let her marry Cain, which made her very happy. So, Tiphina dragged Cain away to train. Meanwhile, the king realized Cain was still the same Cain, and he told everyone to keep his secret. At that moment, Telestia and Silk learned that Cain was now engaged to Tiphina, which made them furious, because they didn't know how many more wives Cain would take. The next day, Cain began studying the book of the first Cain. His name was Yuya. It turned out he had died in an accident. Then, he was summoned to this world. Cain realized Yuya had kept his original appearance when he arrived. Suddenly, Telestia and Silk appeared. They thought Cain was studying for the academy entrance exam. So, they wanted to study with him. But, Cain immediately ran away. Suddenly, he ran into Tiphina. She invited him to spar with her. But, Cain ran away again, because today was an important day for him. It turned out Cain had turned 12 years old. So, he could now register as an adventurer. Cain was thrilled, because the Adventurers Guild in the capital was huge. Then, Cain approached the receptionist, and he registered using his real name. She told Cain to drop a single drop of blood onto the crystal ball. It stored his magical energy. Then, Cain was issued a rank G adventurer card. He remembered that Millie and Nina were rank D adventurers. At that moment, the receptionist introduced herself as Ledia. Suddenly, 3 thugs approached Cain, looking for trouble, because they saw that he was just a child. But, Cain easily defeated them. Just then, a red-haired man arrived to help Cain. The thugs recognized him as Claude, also known as Ice Flame, which made them flee in terror. Claude noticed Cain was very strong. So, he invited Cain to have some juice with him. Meanwhile, Cain was curious about the Ice Flame nickname. Claude explained that it was the name of his party. It turned out he used fire magic, and his wife used ice magic. Claude showed Cain his rank adventurer card, which fascinated Cain. But, Claude said the highest rank was SSS. Suddenly, Claude's wife scolded him. She introduced herself as Lena. Then, she dragged Claude home. At that moment, Cain realized that rank G adventurer quests were just delivery tasks. So, he chose a quest to exterminate a goblin, which made him excited. Suddenly, Cain ran into Tiphina again. He announced that he had become an adventurer. So, Tiphina also wanted to go with Cain, which left Dime helpless. Then, Cain and Tiphina went hunting goblins together. Cain discovered a large number of goblins ahead. they saw a villager being attacked by the goblins. So, Cain and Tiphina rushed to rescue him. Tiphina quickly defeated 3 goblins. But, there were too many of them. So, Cain used support magic, which boosted Tiphina's strength, making her very happy, because she could feel Cain's presence with her. Tiphina swiftly defeated the goblins. Suddenly, a group of green lizards appeared. So, Cain told Tiphina to escort the villager to safety, while he fought them. Then, Cain wiped them out with a single attack. Meanwhile, Millie and Nina arrived in the forest to hunt green lizards. But, all they saw was a massive crater in the ground, which shocked them. Meanwhile, Cain returned to report to Letia. He told her he had defeated 30 green lizards, which left her in shock. So, she immediately reported it to the assistant guild master. He introduced himself as Cedric. He didn't believe Cain had defeated the green lizards. So, Cedric thought Cain was trying to cheat for the reward, because he saw Cain as just a commoner, which shocked Cain. He thought he was about to be expelled. Suddenly, the guild master appeared. He believed that Cain was telling the truth, which surprised Cedric. Then, Tiphina arrived and hugged Cain, leaving everyone in shock, because Cain was her fiancé. So, the guild master told Cedric that Cain was a baron and a hero of the kingdom, freezing Cedric in place. It turned out that Tiphina was the guild master's sister, which surprised Cain. So, Cedric immediately knelt and apologized to Cain. Thankfully, Cain forgave him. At that moment, Eden felt that Cain being a C-rank adventurer was unreasonable. So, he decided to promote Cain to C-rank. But, Tiphina revealed that Cain had defeated a red dragon, which shocked everyone. So, Eden decided to promote Cain straight to A rank, on the condition that he capture some bandits. At that moment, Eden realized that Cain was a good person. So, he felt reassured about entrusting his sister to Cain. Meanwhile, the gods were still watching him. Even though they knew Cain had broken the game too much, they still needed him to be even stronger. Because Aaron's seal was about to be broken. If Aaron returned, this world would turn into hell. And the gods realized there was someone suitable to be Cain's master. The next morning, Sylvia woke Cain up, because today was an important exam. So, Cain immediately used teleportation magic to reach the academy. Then, he received his exam number and entered the test room. At that moment, the exam had begun. Cain realized all this knowledge was something he had learned in his previous life. So, it was too easy for him. In less than 30 minutes, Cain finished the test, shocking the teacher. Then, came the magic test, which excited Cain. He asked the teacher if he could use his full power. She said that the academy had a barrier, so he could use his full strength freely. At that moment, Cain realized a normal 12-year-old had very little mana. If he used his full strength, everyone would be terrified. So, he created a small blue fireball instead. Unexpectedly, it shot straight through the academy's barrier, shocking everyone. Then, he was moved to the swordsmanship test. Unexpectedly, Claude also came to assist the academy. Claude saw Cain, so he wanted to test Cain first. Unexpectedly, Cain moved incredibly fast, and he could fight evenly with Claude, surprising everyone. While Claude was enjoying himself, the teacher realized that Cain's strength was too powerful. So, he told Cain to go home early and wait for the results. When Cain returned home, Sylvia decided to cook a delicious meal to celebrate him. The next day, Cain met the king. The king immediately scolded Cain for testing emperor-level magic during the exam, and for accidentally entering the commoner's exam room. Then, the king told Cain to go check his results. Suddenly, he met Silk. She announced that Cain was the top student in the academy, while Telestia ranked second. But, she was very angry at Cain, because she didn't see him during the exam. At that moment, Cain met his older sister, making her very happy, because he had become the top student. So, Cain would have to give the opening speech at the entrance ceremony, surprising him. Then, the entrance ceremony arrived. Cain saw Telestia and Silk. So, he flirted with them, making them very happy. Then, Cain began his speech. Suddenly, the king also appeared. He started teasing Cain, making Cain feel helpless. Then, Cain entered his classroom. Suddenly, the homeroom teacher announced they needed to choose their future career paths first. When Cain decided to choose adventurer, Telestia and Silk immediately objected, because he would have to lead a noble household in the future. But Silk said he could still choose both. So, Cain decided to pick all the subjects he liked, while Telestia chose subjects that would help Cain manage a country. Suddenly, he saw Palma being bullied by Habit. So, he stepped in to protect Palma, surprising them, because Cain, a noble, knew a commoner. Telestia and Silk also scolded him. So, they quickly apologized to Palma. At that moment, Palma thanked Cain, and she was also very happy to see Cain again. But Telestia and Silk were jealous. They ordered Cain to kneel and explain his relationship with Palma. Suddenly, Cain heard someone talking to him. The voice told him to come to the library. When he opened the door, Cain was suddenly teleported into a house. He didn't know who the person in front of him was. But the man even knew how to make coffee, which shocked Cain. At that moment, the man introduced himself as Yuya. Cain realized he was the first king of the kingdom. Cain thought he was a ghost, since Yuya had lived 300 years ago. So, Yuya told Cain to appraise him. Surprisingly, Yuya was the god of creation. Yuya said he had created his own world, and he had been living here for 300 years. Then, Yuya told Cain, the gods had asked him to train Cain, but Cain felt he was already too strong. So, Yuya told him to try stealing the biscuit from his hand. Unexpectedly, Yuya was incredibly fast. Then, Yuya said, Cain needed to become even stronger to fight his enemy. 300 years ago, that enemy had devastated the world, and he had manipulated people into fighting each other. He created wars everywhere. His name was the god Eren. 300 years ago, Yuya had tried to seal him, but now, the seal was beginning to break. Cain didn't understand why Yuya couldn't seal him again. But Yuya had become the god of this world. So, he and the other gods could no longer interfere with Cain's world. Then, Yuya began training Cain. Yuya said Cain had to reach level 600. Only then could he defeat Eren. But right now, he was only level 300. Yuya told Cain he must return to the mansion. However, he couldn't use teleportation magic. Cain worried about school. But Yuya said 1 year here was only 1 day outside. Then, Yuya teleported away. After that, Cain started fighting the monsters. But there were too many of them. Meanwhile, Telestia and Silk were searching for Cain. They thought he had been kidnapped. But Telestia believed Cain would be fine, and they just needed to wait for him to return. While Cain was still fighting the monsters, he became exhausted. Suddenly, he saw a small injured wolf. It reminded him of 2 girls from his past life. So, Cain used the last of his magic to heal the wolf. This made him faint. When Cain woke up, he realized the wolf was protecting him. This made Cain very happy. So, he named it Haku. In the following days, they kept fighting together. Finally, Cain reached Yuya's mansion. Yuya noticed Cain had grown a lot. It turned out they had been training for 4 years. Suddenly, Yuya realized Cain's wolf was a divine beast. This surprised Cain. Yuya told Cain to make a contract with Haku. That way, he could summon it anytime. Suddenly, Yuya introduced another master to Cain. His name was Doran. So, Cain started training with him. Unexpectedly, Doran easily defeated Cain. When Cain woke up, he met Doran's wife and a small dragon. This excited him. Then, Cain got to eat. This made him very happy, because her cooking was delicious. Meanwhile, Telestia and Silk were still waiting for Cain to return. But, Cain was still training with Doran. This exhausted him. After a year, Cain had improved a lot. So, he wanted to learn more about Eren. At this moment, Yuya told him, Eren was the entertainment god, and he was once one of the 7 pillar gods of Cain's world. Because Eren forced all the people into a death game, he was exiled from the divine realm. Yuya said the only way to defeat Eren was for Cain to grow stronger. Then, Yuya revealed something to him. His fallen comrades from the battle against Eren were actually Cain's parents from his previous life. Before that, Cain's parents had also been summoned to this world. Then, the gods asked them to stop Eren. However, Eren was too powerful, and he killed everyone. So, Cain's parents sacrificed themselves, allowing Yuya to seal Eren away. At this moment, Cain defeated Doran, because he was determined to avenge his parents. So, Cain promised he would defeat Eren and protect this world. Finally, Cain completed his training. So, Yuya made him small again. That way, he could return to his world. Meanwhile, everyone was still worried about Cain. Luckily, he had returned. This made everyone very happy. At that moment, Cain told the king he had met the first king of the S-Fort kingdom. This shocked everyone, and Yuya had sent a sword to the king. After that, Cain returned to the Adventurers Guild. Because he had been gone for 5 days. If he didn't complete his bandit hunt mission soon, his registration would be revoked. Then, Eden gave Cain the bandits' location. So, he immediately set out to track them down. At that moment, Cain saw the bandits surrounding a group of people. It turned out to be Millie, Nina, and Palma's father. Cain saw that the bandits were about to attack his friends. Thus, he instantly defeated them. Millie didn't understand why Cain was here. So, he showed them his A-rank adventurer card. This surprised them. After that, he handed the bandits over to the Adventurers Guild. Thanks to this, he completed his mission. Suddenly, those bandits tried to tease Millie and Nina. So, Cain stepped in to stop them. This made them terrified. At that moment, Claude and his wife also arrived. Unexpectedly, Claude was Millie's older brother. This surprised Cain. After that, Millie and Nina told them what had happened. When Claude found out Cain was an A-rank adventurer, he was shocked, because Cain had only just registered. At that moment, they didn't understand why Cain was so strong. But, Cain couldn't reveal his secret. Suddenly, Cain remembered he needed to go to school, since he had already missed 5 days. So, he quickly ran off. At that moment, the teacher told the students to practice magic. This excited Cain, but the teacher immediately banned him from using offensive magic, because they were afraid he would destroy the academy again. At that moment, Claude's group was observing Cain. They realized he was being isolated. So, they decided to help him. Claude's group then went to Cain's class. It turned out they were guest instructors for the day. Suddenly, Claude told everyone to take out their adventurer cards. This made Cain nervous, because everyone would be shocked to see his golden card. So, Cain said he had forgotten it at home. After that, they began sword training. Cain thought he would get to fight. But, Claude's group completely ignored him. It turned out this was all part of their plan, to let everyone witness Cain's strength. Finally, it was Cain's turn to fight. But, class time had ended. This shocked him. At that moment, Cain was furious. So, he went into the forest and attacked monsters. This made Cain's father think a demon king had appeared. But, when he arrived, he realized the one destroying the forest was Cain. The next morning, the king scolded him. At that moment, Yuya's seal had weakened. This excited Aaron, because he was about to return. The next morning, Cain's class would learn monster summoning. This made everyone excited, but they couldn't form contracts with creatures stronger than them. When it was Cain's turn, he thought he would summon Haku. Unexpectedly, he summoned a demon king. So, Cain immediately used light magic to blind everyone. He suspected this demon king was Aaron's ally. Suddenly, the demon king appraised Cain. When Cain prepared to attack him, the demon king unexpectedly swore loyalty to Cain, because he realized Cain was a divine apostle. Then, he introduced himself as Seto. Because Cain wanted to get rid of him, he had no choice but to agree to form a contract with Seto. At that moment, everyone was still in shock. Luckily, Cain had tricked them. When the king heard that Cain had summoned a demon king, it shocked him. They feared the demon king would destroy the kingdom. At that moment, no one knew Cain's magic power level. So, Cain showed them his stats. This left them speechless, because Cain had become a demigod. Even his magic power was immeasurable. Everyone froze. They realized that with Cain's strength, he could destroy the world. But, Cain said he would never do that. At that moment, the king decided to grant Cain the title of Count, and he would announce Cain's engagement to the public. When Cain returned home, he received a report. The monsters in the forest were attacking his father's territory. So, Cain immediately returned. At that moment, his older brother told him the monsters were about to invade the city. So, Cain decided to investigate. But, Jin thought it was too dangerous. Cain immediately took out his A-rank adventurer card and showed it to Jin. This shocked Jin. So, he believed in Cain's strength. At that moment, Cain entered the forest. He summoned Haku and Jin to assist him. Suddenly, Cain sensed something extremely dangerous in the forest. So, he summoned Seto for help. Seto also noticed someone powerful was present. He then summoned another one of his subordinates. The figure recognized Cain as Seto's master. So, he bowed to Cain. It turned out Dalmatia was one of the 4 demon generals under Seto, and he was highly skilled in reconnaissance. So, he used his detection abilities. Meanwhile, Cain was battling the monsters. Dalmatia was amazed by Cain's strength. Afterward, Cain entrusted them with handling the situation, so he could return and report to everyone. At that moment, Claude's group was astonished, because Cain had eliminated numerous S-rank monsters. Meanwhile, Aaron sensed someone entering the forest. This intrigued him, so he ordered all the monsters to begin their attack. This made Seto anxious. He immediately returned to inform Cain. So, Cain decided to advance into the forest alone. Suddenly, Tiffana arrived. She wanted to go with Cain, but Cain told her to stay and protect the city. This made her happy, because she could protect her husband's homeland. At that moment, Cain's group began fighting the monsters, and he noticed Aaron ahead. Seto said he would hold back the monsters. Thus, Cain could reach that dangerous enemy. At that moment, Millie was very worried about Cain. So, everyone decided to go with him. Meanwhile, Seto summoned his subordinates. This surprised them, because they didn't know who had made a pact with their demon king. Thus, Dalmatia told them it was a demigod. This shocked everyone, so they were determined to help Cain. Meanwhile, Cain was trying to reach Aaron. Suddenly, a black dragon attacked Cain. He realized it was Aaron. It turned out Aaron was still sealed. So, he borrowed the dragon's body. At that moment, Aaron was thrilled, because he wanted his monsters to kill Cain's friends. While Seto's group was still holding back the monsters, Claude's group also arrived, so they began to fight. At that moment, Aaron kept attacking Cain. Thus, Cain countered with fire. However, Aaron was too strong, so Cain summoned Haku and Jin to help. This made Aaron furious, and he tried to finish off Haku. Meanwhile, Claude's group was exhausted, but there were too many monsters. Fortunately, Tiffana arrived. It turned out she had brought the knights to help. At that moment, Aaron kept attacking Haku and Jin. So, Cain blocked him. He was determined to protect his friends. Suddenly, Cain unleashed Overload Light. This surprised Aaron. So, he attacked Cain. But, Cain's power overwhelmed him, and he won the battle. Cain didn't even realize the fight had ended. Finally, Cain returned to everyone. This made them very happy. Seto realized he had made the right choice. At that moment, the king was furious with Cain, because the light he released was too great. It made the people think it was the light of a god. So, they knelt in worship. The king had no idea who Cain had fought. That required him to use imperial-level magic, and even call a demon king for help. This made him feel helpless. The next morning, the king granted Cain the title of Viscount, and he awarded him a territory. When Tiffana learned that Cain would govern Drintel, she was surprised, because that place was known for its bad luck. But, Cain was excited. He decided to build a new town there. This made everyone happy. Then, Cain traveled to Drintel, and he punished the local thugs. Suddenly, Seto arrived. It turned out he had been caught cheating by his wife. So, she was chasing him, but Cain couldn't defend Seto, because he also had many wives. After that, Cain built a massive castle. This amazed everyone, and the gods were still happily watching him. That's it for today's video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support Oni-chan in future videos. Thank you all for watching. Love you all.